Besides security, one of the most important things that you have to focus on your website would be the speed of your website. How quickly does your website load when someone visits your website? Now, it's a well-known fact that nowadays people have very short attention spans. So if your website doesn't load within the first few seconds, it's very likely that the person will move on to another website. So how do we ensure that our website loads very quickly at all times? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. There is a system, or rather a process called caching that speeds up how quickly a website loads. So the natural question right now would be, what exactly is caching? What does caching mean? All right, now let's say, for example, someone visited themoviecharacters.com, okay? Now what happens is, before the person would see our menu, the post, the content, everything, what happens is our web server will have to provide that person's computer with all the information and text, right? Now that process itself is time consuming. It takes a lot of server resources, because the server would have to be the one to provide all the content, the images, the text, and all that stuff. Now, what caching does is that caching would simply make a copy of every single page that user has visited, so that the very next time the user visits that particular web page, rather than our server being the one to provide the contents of that web page, it will be our website that will provide that content instead. And this will actually save lots of time. I hope I'm making myself clear on this, okay? Naturally, the very first time anyone visits your website, it's your web server who will provide that person with the contents of your website, okay? But it will make no sense if the person visits your website, closes it, and then within the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes decides to open your website again. Rather than your web server having to provide that same user for the same contents all over again, this time it will be your website itself that will provide the contents of your website. That's exactly what it's called, caching. Now, I just really there is a lot more to caching than what I've just explained to you, but I'm trying to simplify the explanation as much as possible, okay? I can spend the next 3 hours basically breaking down exactly how all the content from your website appears on the user's screen, but I don't want to get into that. Just for now, just know that caching speeds up your website's load times, because caching would make a copy of your website. So rather than your server having to provide the contents of your website, it will be the cached version that will be provided instead, okay? All right, so before I go on to introduce you to a plugin that will do that for us, I wanted to talk to you about this particular tool called the Page Speed Insights tool by Google. And this is a particular tool that can analyze and tell you just how quickly your website loads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the movie characters, which is the URL from our website. And I'm going to click on Analyze. All right, now as you can see, we have a score for mobile and we have another score for desktop. And so this is 71 out of 100 and this is 82 out of 100, which is kind of decent. It's not exactly bad, okay? But over here you have some other scores as well, like the user experience is 98 out of 100, which is pretty good. Desktop is pretty good as well. As you can see, we have 5 past rules, and there's a lot of stuff here that you don't actually need to know about. But basically, all I wanted to show you here is the scores: 71 out of 100, and then 82 out of 100. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to install a plugin called the W3 Total Cache plugin. We're going to do some settings. We're going to make sure that it's set up properly, and then we'll come back and then analyze and see if the speed of our website has improved. All right, so I'm going to come down to my back end, go to plugins, and I'm going to type W3. All right, click on install now. activate the plugin. All right, now what happens is you're going to have your performance tab that will open up right here, okay? Now, just like the Yoast SEO plugin that we installed earlier in this course, you have like a whole range of settings to work on. But what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to show you the ones that you need to do. The rest you can leave as they are, because just like the Yoast SEO plugin, this particular plugin also will by default select the usual best standards for any website, so you don't really have to tweak any of the things over there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on General Settings. Okay, General Settings. All right, now over here you definitely want to toggle the page cache. Okay, so I'm going to click this to enable page cache. Over here you have several options, but just leave it on disk enhanced. That's exactly what you want to do. You have minify, you have database cache, you have object cache. Leave these ones as they are. Do not toggle them. Now, you may be wondering, well, why aren't we exactly enabling these? Because it says, enable database caching to reduce post, page, and feed creation time. Now, this sounds very positive, right? So why aren't we, or why is it I'm not recommending that you toggle this, you enable this? Well, unfortunately, unlike the page cache, minify, database cache, and object cache do not work well universally on all servers, okay? Your server might respond very well to an object cache or a database cache, but also your website may not respond well to it. So this is why often as a safety precaution, I often recommend that you do not enable a database cache or an object cache. However, you can enable your browser cache, which by default, as you can see, it's enabled. So let me just go ahead and then click on Save All Settings over here. Save All Settings. So essentially, under the general settings, all we had to do was just to toggle and enable the page cache option. All right, so the next I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to my browser cache. Okay, click on browser cache. Now over here you can specify your global browser cache policy. Now, before I go on, what exactly is the difference between a page cache and a browser cache, right? Like, what's the difference? Basically, a page cache is just your WordPress website simply making copies of each page that the user has visited. So instead of your web server having to provide the contents of those pages to the user, it's our website that will actually provide the contents. Okay, so that's basically what page cache essentially means. It's very, very straightforward. Now, a browser cache, on the other hand, goes like this. Say, for example, our user used Google Chrome to visit themoviecharacters.com. Google Chrome can actually create a folder where it will itself store all the contents of our website. It will store posts, the images, pictures, everything that the user has visited. So instead of our website having to provide the contents of those pages the next time the user visits the page, it is actually his own web client, in this case Google Chrome, that would actually provide all that information from him, as long as there hasn't been any change in the in the information on our website. Okay, so that's exactly how browser cache works. All right, so in this case, all I have to do is to simply tick on all these options. I'm going to tick on all these options, with the exception of set W3 total cache header. You don't need this, and you also don't need to process 404 errors for static objects with WordPress either. Okay, so tick everything with the exception of this one and this one right over here as well. You don't need those. Now click on Save All Settings, and we're pretty much done with with the total cache plugin. So all right, so what we're going to do right now is I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to refresh this, and Okay, so mobile has improved from 71 to 74, and as you can see, desktop has improved from 82 to 85. So basically, as you can see, our scores have actually already improved, as you can see. So, well, but why exactly is this still 74 and not, like 85 or 90 or even 99? Well, we do have some other issues right here, like eliminating vendor blocking JavaScript and CSS, blah blah blah, and all stuff like this. Which, well, this would kind of be me going above the curriculum of this course, but basically, all you need to know is using the Total Cache plugin will improve your website's speed and performance. So, if you have any questions again with regard, what I've explained here, I know it can be a little bit confusing. Please do not hesitate to ask me any questions. I'll try to answer them as clearly as I can. Also, look for a link in the resources tab. I'll provide some links where you can actually read more about caching to hopefully improve your understanding. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next class.